All right, let's get right into it. For about 65 years now, many African nations have had political independence. Their own flags, their own governments, but financial independence, that has been a totally different ballgame. The thing is, a massive shift is happening right now, creating a choice that just hasn't been on the table before.
This quote right here, it cuts straight to the heart of the issue. It perfectly captures the tension that's defined African economies for decades. I mean, political freedom is one thing, but if the financial strings are still being pulled from halfway across the world, are you really independent? That's the big question we're digging into.
Now, to be clear, this isn't some conspiracy theory. This is about the systems, the financial architecture that was built for a different time and, well, has kept many African economies on a very tight leash. Let's break down two of the biggest examples of how this has worked. Okay, so first up is the CFA franc. It's a classic trade-off. On the one hand, you get what seems like stability. Because it's backed by the French treasury, you get fixed exchange rates, lower inflation. Sounds good, right? But here's the catch, and it is a big one. A massive loss of sovereignty. 14 of these nations have to park 50% of their foreign reserves in France. Just imagine needing to build a new port or buy medical supplies and having to ask your former colonizer for permission to spend your own money. That's the system. Now, even for the countries that aren't using the CFA franc, there's this other much bigger trap: dependence on the US dollar. Think about it. When an African country sells oil or cocoa, it almost always gets paid in dollars. And when it buys tractors from Germany or phones from Korea, that trade is also priced in dollars. The source we're looking at uses a great analogy. It's like having to pay your landlord a fee every single time you want to buy something from your next-door neighbor. It's just inefficient, and it costs a fortune. And here's what that cost looks like in a single, stark number: 8.5%. According to the World Bank, that is the average fee to send money back home to sub-Saharan Africa. It's the highest in the entire world. And you know why? It's not because of some local issue. It's because the global financial pipes force nearly every transaction through big banks in New York or London first.
And this slide shows you the human cost of that 8.5%. Take a domestic worker in New York sending $500 home every month. She's already losing about $42 in fees. Then you add on a new remittance tax, and suddenly she's out nearly $570 a year. That's money that could have paid for school, for medicine, for food, just gone, vanished into the system.
And this dependency creates this incredible vulnerability. Look at this chart. A decision made by the Fed in Washington to raise interest rates can cause African currencies to absolutely plummet. Just look at the beating the Naira, the Cedi, and the Kwacha have taken. Now sure, local governance is part of the story, but a huge chunk of this is structural. It's a system where a foreign bank's policy can literally crash your economy.
So when you put it all together, you see the picture. It's a trap. A systemic one, a situation where you need dollars to play in the global economy, but the rules of the game are expensive and leave you totally exposed. And for the better part of 60 years, there was simply no other way, no exit door. Until now.
And this is where the story takes a huge turn, because over the last few years, a whole different set of financial pipes has been built. For the very first time, a real alternative is on the table. An exit door has finally opened.
So how did this happen? Well, this timeline shows you how the new plumbing was laid down piece by piece. It really started back in 2015 with China's version of SWIFT, called CIPS. Then, a huge step in late 2024, the BRICS Pay platform goes live, designed specifically to let countries trade in their own currencies. And by mid-2025, CIPS hits this critical mass, connecting thousands of banks all over the world. Suddenly, it's a genuine, large-scale alternative.
And this analogy is probably the single most important takeaway. This is not about China being some kind of savior. It's way more fundamental than that. For decades, it's been like living in a town with only one grocery store. They set the prices, they set the rules, you had no choice. Now, a second store just opened across the street, and all of a sudden, there's competition. And competition gives you leverage. It gives you options.
The amazing thing is, this isn't just theory anymore. It is happening right now on the ground. So let's take a quick tour and see how different African nations are already starting to use these new options.
So first, let's look at Kenya. They're making a really savvy move. They're planning to repay $3.5 billion of Chinese debt using Chinese yuan. This lowers their interest costs and, crucially, lets them hold on to their precious dollar reserves. But look closer. They're not abandoning the dollar. It's still 60% of their reserves. This is about diversification. They're strategically adding another tool to their toolbox. They're playing the field. And it is not just Kenya. Ethiopia is looking at a similar move to help manage its own debt crisis. And Egypt is going even further, signing deals to trade in local currencies and exploring something called panda bonds. That's basically a way for Egypt to raise money directly from investors in China in yuan, completely bypassing the Western financial system.
Nigeria's currency swap is another brilliant example of how this works in the real world. By renewing this deal, they've basically built a direct financial bridge to China. So a Nigerian business that's importing electronics can now pay its Chinese supplier directly by swapping naira for yuan. They don't have to go buy expensive dollars first. It just cuts out the middleman, saving time and, of course, a lot of money.
And this quote, "This just makes it all so real." This isn't just about high-level finance. It's about a fabric trader in Lagos trying to grow her business. Before, a simple transaction took a week and ate up 6% in fees. Now, with the yuan option, she gets it done in 2 days for less than 1%. That's not just an improvement, that is a complete game changer for her.
And then you have this move from South Africa's Standard Bank. This shows you the potential scale of all this. Because Standard Bank operates in 20 different African countries, when it plugs directly into China's SIP system, it's not just one country connecting. It instantly creates a network, a new piece of pan-African financial plumbing that links a huge part of the continent to this alternative system.
Okay, so lower costs, more options, faster trade, this all sounds pretty fantastic. But it would be a huge mistake to think this is some kind of silver bullet. This new path comes with its own set of very real risks and complications. The source material points to 3 big ones we really need to be aware of. First, the very real danger of just swapping one dependency for another. Second, the hard truth that new payment systems don't fix bad government. And third, the growing concern around data and surveillance. Let's start with that first risk. If you're going to repay your loans in yuan, well, you need to earn yuan. And how do you do that? By exporting your stuff to China. As this economist points out, that means your economic health is now directly tied to China's economy. If they have a recession and stop buying your goods, you could be in a world of trouble. So you have to ask, are you just trading one master for another? The second point is absolutely critical. These new systems are just tools. They don't magically fix bad governance. A country can still mismanage its money, print currency to pay for a war, or borrow way more than it can ever hope to pay back. The external financial plumbing can't fix internal leadership failures. And that leads to the third risk: who's watching the data? Every transaction creates a digital footprint, and the question is, who controls that information and how might they use it? So, where does all of this lead us? Well, it's becoming pretty clear that the real path to independence isn't about choosing sides in a global power struggle. It's not about picking Washington or Beijing. The real opportunity is something much, much bigger.
And this, right here, is the ultimate point. The goal is to use this new leverage, the power that comes from having a choice, to build real, genuine economic sovereignty, to pour energy into projects like the African Continental Free Trade Area, to build pan-African payment systems so that trade between Ghana and Kenya doesn't need to go through New York or Shanghai. The endgame is to stop needing masters altogether.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought, because it's a powerful one. The real victory isn't choosing the yuan over the dollar. The real victory will be building African systems that are so strong, so integrated, and so dynamic that the rest of the world has to compete for access to us. What would it take to make that happen? That is the question and the conversation that this new era of choice has finally put on the table.